Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women of the Future interview series, a project aimed at showcasing and celebrating the top female changemakers in Web3 and the Metaverse, using emerging technologies as a force for good in the real world. This initiative aims to amplify the voices of these leaders and innovators to inspire future leaders to ensure that women are not only are left behind, but also they get what they deserved. They get their seat at the table. And so we are here today. It's my honor, as my name is Elizabeth Irizarry, to introduce Dr. Loretta Chen, building human, social, and creative capital in the metaverse. She's also an author, speaker, professor, and co-founder of 𝗂𝗺 Studios. Hopefully I got that right. She's one of the top 100 women featured in Asia. And of course, it's our pleasure to welcome her as one of the 100 women of the future. Welcome, Loretta. It's an honor to have you.
Hey there, it's so nice talking to you, Elizabeth. And I also forget to add, I am a fur mom. I'm a fur mom to 18. So you're going to see a little carnival and circle of cats cavorting around. So yeah, just one of the gazillion things us women do, right? I mean, there's a saying, how do you get something done? And the punchline or tagline is, give it to a busy woman. I fully agree, right? We'll get it together. We'll get it done.
I love it. Multiple talents, multitasker. That's our skill sets always. I love that. So Loretta, I'd love to get to know a little bit about you and what was your journey into this space. So I hear that you have cats. So I'd love to see and understand more about your background and your interests.
I know. Okay. How much time have we got? Okay. So, I will always say if I can end up being a co-founder and CEO of a metaverse architecture firm, so can you. I'm the least tech person, right? Most times I even struggle to turn on a computer. But I think I got really interested in the space around the pandemic because my co-founder used to work for me. I used to run a design and build creative agency, meaning we're real builders, right? We design and build retail spaces. I would do the branding and marketing, and I have a background in theater, which I'll talk about in a while. And so I would do all the design and branding and marketing. And 𝗺𝗺𝗲𝗄, who is now my co-founder, is a trained architect, and he would design all these wonderful sort of exhibition spaces and physical retail spaces that we would build up. And then in 2014-15, I moved to Hawaii, because I met my now husband, and we were raising 18 cats. So I decided, okay, I need to take a hiatus from, this brick and mortar design and built world and move to Hawaii. I can't resist, right? And I thought for a while, because in a pre-pandemic world, our clients were still very much used to seeing us face to face and wanting that, interaction. So I thought I'm going to take a break from that and really focus on my book writing and going back to academia. However, as things happen, right, I think it's a conflation of, the blockchain technology, cryptocurrency becoming a little bit more mainstream, and conflation of all these forces coming together, making it, almost impossible for us to say no to this opportunity to create our own studio. So what had happened was, over the pandemic, 𝗺𝗺𝗏 started exploring with this now ubiquitous metaverse known as the Sandbox. So he was, and so we ended up becoming part of the original Game Makers Fund, because he had gone in there and played around the space and got acquainted with this opportunity to create digital spaces and potentially have digital ownership. Today, we talk about it like we know what it's all about. But back then, in 2019, 2020, it was still a very little known concept. We put in a proposal, and our intention, because we were brand builders, our intention was to create a opportunity for momtrepreneurs, solopreneurs, NGOs, brands to come into a digital space. I mean, I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but not many of us own malls in the real world, right? Maybe you do, but I don't. And so we thought if we had an ability to create a digital space in a metaverse, we wanted to open it up to folks who are typically not able to participate in the real world economy because they were priced out. So we put in a proposal to create Cobble Land, which is meant to be this exposition to bring in brands and businesses, even, projects like Women of the Future, for example, to come on board. And this really sort of took off because, I think we had the foresight to see that communities will be built on the metaverse, right? There was not just going to be a gaming platform. Now, we didn't know how quickly it would blow up, but just under a year when we started, by October 2021, the Zuck, right, announced its name change from Facebook to Meta. And, there's just incremental, exponential interest in the metaverse. And since then, our business has really taken off. So what started as a smaller outfits, mobile studios, just really servicing digital natives, NFT projects that wanted to explore the metaverse. Now we're literally talking to, banking institutions, mainstream brands, high street retail brands, anyone from a mom and pop shop to a solopreneur really wanting to get into the metaverse. So I will say there is a stroke of magic. There's a stroke of luck. There's a stroke of opportunity because this I'm theater trained. So I can't think of anyone more live than a theater practitioner, right? So my background, like I said, was in the theater. I did live events. I did branding and marketing, doing the entire setup for brands to, launch their events. I used to do it for Samsung, for Nike, for Adidas, for Louis Vuitton, right? The design and build and the live launches. So that was what I specialized in. So to make that transition was, like I said, a combination of all these factors. Plus, I think the willingness to see the future. And I think that's exactly why we're so excited that we're in this call together.
Yes. And I love this journey story because sometimes I love to ask the background story of the skill sets because it all comes together. It was interesting to hear the architecture standpoint too. And so I come from a design background. I did 10 years in architecture and design. I'm a designer by trade. And so I did a lot of renderings, 3Ds in my life and built physical spaces, for people. For me, it felt like it was, how do I take out what was in my mind in the story of how I created a space and made it so that you can picture it as well. And I feel that's where we are now. So when I left my industry to enter this Web3 space, I felt at first like two different worlds. But the more I connect with amazing people like you and I hear the backstories, it all starts to come together. It was all leading up to this point, all those skill sets here. And so I love this story because we love to kind of inspire the women around the world to understand that you may not have to have this perfect background or this experience, but take your skill sets and continue to develop. But I would love to ask you, obviously, the metaverse, there's limitless opportunities. What kinds of opportunities do you see in Web3 in the metaverse space right now?
I mean, you're absolutely right, Elizabeth. I think just hearing your skill sets, we're like, can we have a conversation offline? We want to be able to work with you and potentially even have you be one of our designers. Because I think, but jokes aside, I think it's really serious, the conversation we're having, because at the frontline seat that we're at, we see a real lack of creative talent. Because I think the world, and I have to speak in grossly general terms here, pre the metaverse, right, was still very much, STEM versus arts, right? I mean, there was this sense of like, you have to be a math and science and engineering student, or you have to be an arts and liberal, arts and liberal arts student, right? And the world was still sort of bifurcated, even though it's been years when Steve Jobs said, if I didn't, leave my company and go to art school, I wouldn't have formed Apple, right? It really is this mindset that we really need to be the Renaissance men and women. It's a combination of all these sort of interdisciplinary skill sets, right? Which is, even for me as an academic professor, something I'm constantly harping on. But I think prior to what we're seeing today, there was still this notion that you can make a career in the arts, you can't make a career in design, and please don't become a gamer, right? Like if you're a parent, you're probably telling your child, please don't get into the gaming industry, please don't even game, you're wasting my money. But I think what got me really interested and set up to notice was really from an education, altruistic, and advocate standpoint, right? Because I'm such a community builder and advocate, and always looking at opportunities for the underserved. That's really where my heart is. And so I saw that 𝗺, who was my co-founder, I mean, what had happened was, he was always a gamer, but he had to pick up a useful skill set to become an architect, because you're like, you can't make a career out of gaming and being a comic artist. So, but on the side, he'd always just gamed and felt that, this talent could come to fruition someday. I think all artists have that. You know, we all can say, yeah, we want to do art for art's sake, but come on, for those of us who have really put all our lives, you know, blood, sweat, and tears together, we definitely know that this must mean something. But previously, the only jobs that really mattered were, you know, on Wall Street, right? Or your engineer or your lawyer. And I think the conflation of all these technologies that we see today are pushed forth by creative individuals like us that don't take no for an answer, that see opportunities, that see how these technologies can be fused together to create more opportunities. And that is why you see now gaming has become an on-ramp for the metaverse, because gamers have for decades been like pushing the boundaries, creating more souped up computers. And today we're looking to them to say, hey, leaders, show us the way on this like metaverse revolution, right? Because you have for decades just been pushing the boundaries and frontiers of what technology can do just for fun and entertainment. And now finally, we have the ability to actually create a real world economy. And so this is what made me sort of sit up and notice and say, we actually have a new sort of world happening, right? I mean, we had the change from, from a technical industrial economy to later on what we call it an experience economy. So I think now it really is a conceptual economy, a creative economy. And so the jobs that I see happening, to your point, will exactly be this conflation, right? We need a combination of architects who can create spaces that defy gravity, defy the laws of physics, that are fantastic, that allow you to daydream, right? And we also need event planners that can create these like live events in these like metaverse spaces. We also need game makers, storytellers who are able to tell brands and bring brands in and understand real world economics and yet be able to create engaging, sticky experiences that are fun, entertaining, and yet also allows a brand to build their business and build traction and build connection with their customers. And all of this, like I said, was not possible before, right? You're either, right, building up a live store, right? And then you have a live event. And then you maybe, in the last sort of 10, 20 years, you have a social media platform. But today, you technically can create these immersive experiences in a metaverse, fuse fun, games, technology, social media, right? Mass media. And it's now really all coming together. So I think the jobs that we're really looking to create are conflation of all of these of these disciplines: architecture, graphic design, event planning, economics, right, business, and industrial design. Because we definitely see increasingly more and more people do want to be able to participate in these economies. And we definitely have a lack of trained talent. And that's also why 𝗺𝗺 is working with Sandbox to create academies as well, to begin to be able to train people and contribute to the ecosystem.
I love that, because it sounds even like a production, like a movie production, where you would have this fictional story and you can only create in this fictional phase. Same thing. If you were ever in design school, it was like the first, year, have fun, go think as big as you want. And then it was like, well, now let's talk about real life projects. You can't think this big in real life. And then we have the Zaha Hadids of the world that we admire. And then we're like, but she did it. Like, look at what she built. Why can't I think this big? Construction has evolved. And I love this kind of change in our mindset, this evolution. But obviously, we are still limited to the technology where it stands today. Obviously, we're in the early days of this digital revolution. What do you think are some of those kind of biggest barriers for this mass adoption to happen? Like challenges, concerns, any problems you have seen in kind of developing this really creative, this forward-thinking metaverse concept?
First thing, mindsets, right? Because as with all things, if we're not open to opportunity and we're not open to the possibilities, then we're closing off our minds to the possibilities that the technologies can bring. Because fundamentally, the thing that really excites me is these conversations, right? It's folks like us that sit around and can dream up these possibilities. These conversations lead to actions, lead to projects that in turn feed this ecosystem, right? It first stems from human capital. I always say if I have to have one last dollar, I always will bet it on human capital. But the first thing we need to do is to change mindsets. Because if Henry Ford, right? Said that, if I only just listened to what my customers wanted, then my customers would have just said, give me a faster horse, right? But who's willing to think outside the box and say, what can I do to use the technologies that are present to create something that could enable me to move as fast as a horse, but yet make it even something better? And hence the car was created. But if we had a lot of naysayers who say, no, just have faster horses, have them to breed more, right? We won't be where we are today. So same thing, I think, with the technology we are today. We need to hone a entire sort of generation of thinkers that are not afraid to fail, that are not afraid to dream big, think large, fail fast, fail hard, get back up again, and then do it again, right? I think this constant innovation, iteration, that's why these conversations are so important. I was on a panel last night with ~𝗵𝗺𝗵𝗴. I'm with you again today, because I truly think it starts with a conversation. It starts with empowering. It starts with inspiring. It starts with daring to think it. Because if you don't think it, then it shuts. Then the other thing that I think is important is, of course, putting action to words, right? Because a dream without any action plan is a dream. So we need women, right, like us, to sort of say, this is an idea. How do we mobilize? How do we get into action? How do we get funding? How do we get resources? How do we get something started? I think that in itself is very powerful, because look at what we're able to do with, say, Women of the Future, right? It started with just a little dream. It became a book, and now there's a podcast. And I think I'm involved in creating the Women of the Future Asia series, potentially Africa series. But my point is, what we need is people to dare to dream, think out of the box, dare to put it to action, mobilize an MVP and minimal viable product, right? Put it out there, right? Receive feedback, even if it's painful, grow it, and then be open to, seeing all the opportunities that are out there, forming collaborations. I can't emphasize this enough, right? I think that, for the last 40, 50 years, there is this mindset of, just shareholder value, right? Let's keep everything we know to ourselves, close to our chest, just for our shareholders, right? Let's not share anything of our competitors so we can have this like competitor's edge. But I think increasingly, you see the whole open source movement, right? You see like GitHub. You see everything moving towards, it's like this Wikipedia. If we collectively put our ideas and our thoughts together and form this like collective consciousness and collective Wikipedia, my cats are excited. They say yes to that. I think we can create much more. So I think we must also try and break these barriers to think that competition is the only way to stay ahead. Let's collaborate. Let's innovate. Let's help each other and empower each other. I think that's definitely the three ways I think we can really then proactively move ahead and co-create the metaverse together.
I think that was all beautifully said, and it really had me thinking about exactly why we are here having this conversation. The book is called Women of the Future, and I think it's timely with, this evolving technology, and as, all of this convergence of, what is the emerging technologies that are going to deliver this Web3 kind of metaverse future. We are very focused on how to generate more diversity and inclusivity in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, because it's important for the future of this technology to evolve, to make sure that there is equality and that women can achieve that true gender gap, and make sure that the crypto and Web3 space isn't just filled with that bro culture. And so, what can you speak to that? Because, we see that traditionally just in tech, only 2% of women actually get, venture backed. So there's a lot of stats and there's a lot of scary numbers. We don't have to call them out. We know that they exist. And right now, we've seen companies like Yuga Labs, who has raised funding, who continues to take over this space, but they are a very different, there's a very different audience attached to that and a very different approach. How do we encourage women? What kind of message would you share who are maybe scared of thinking big, creating big, because they don't think they can get that funding or they can get the support they need?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, even Yuga Labs is like, founded largely by four white men, right? And again, I think the fact that I can be seated here and you are seated here, right? I mean, and look at us. I mean, we represent that BIPOC diverse population. And I think there's some, there are, I mean, and to be an entrepreneur, to be in this space, you have to be an eternal optimist. I mean, not to be a Pollyanna, like to your point, we understand the statistics. We sometimes understand the odds are stacked against us, but that's not going to let that stop us, right? So, I mean, just look at us around the room. First off, it's like we're leaning in. I mean, you could be in some cushy, walled garden, go work for Facebook or go work for Google, but you're instead saying, I opt to be in Web3. And increasingly, we're actually seeing that happen more and more, right? Even though there are all these very lucrative jobs in the FANGs, we're seeing a large number of LGBTQIA, BIPOC women sort of really jump in and lean in and say, we want to explore this new metaverse and be part of this co-creation. So that's one. I think some of the wheels of that engine has already started changing. I think the coronavirus had something to do with it. Maybe that's the one good thing that came out of that. It made people sort of sit up and say, let me just reassess my life. If I had this one life to live, how can I take my chance and make it really mean something? I think that's something that's happened. I also think that for women too. I mean, for us, 𝗃𝗧 Studios, right? Look at me. I mean, this is women-owned, minority-owned. My team is completely diverse from all over the world, right? My CFO is female. My co-founder, while he's male, I always say he's honorary female, right? He's raised by a community of lesbian moms, and so he's like, okay, he's technically. I always say like he's like a butch lesbian, really, and my BFF. But my point is, I think we need to empower more of these women, non-binaries to sort of step up, speak up, and provide safe spaces. I think the creation of safe spaces is truly important. I think I have had so many conversations with underserved communities, LGBTQIA, BIPOC. I mean, most times what prevents them from stepping forward is fear. That's really it, right? They fear acceptance. They fear failure. So we can create a safe environment. My CFO, I coaxed her to join us because she was a stay-at-home mom. I saw immense talent, but she's like, oh no, I haven't worked in a corporate for a long time. I was like, no, we're not corporate, I just need you to lean in. You can still be full-time mom as long as you devote your time to doing this. I trust you to carve your own space. I think allowing folks to thrive, especially in this like remote work environment, I think that's really important. And I think too, it's cultivating opportunities. Like you said, the old boys have their old boys club. They go golfing, they create opportunities for themselves to pat each other's backs and have their little tournaments, golfing tournaments and old boys club or drinking clubs. I think it's very important that us women, non-binaries, for example, just really also come together and create spaces where we connect, create, converse. I think these are definitely things that we can do to create more opportunity. And just a big shout out to the sandbox that funded us, right? I think I have no doubt that one of the reasons they funded us is because, we're minority and women owned. And they saw that, and they actually come out and say that is part of our ethos, right? We want to engender, empower diversity, equity, inclusion, because everybody is everybody, and open is open, right? That we shouldn't have a walled garden. We shouldn't have a hidden agenda, and should really make it as equitable as possible. So it definitely has to be us wanting to lean in, but also organizations, entrepreneurs, folks like us to provide platforms to bring everyone into this space.
Incredible. And we hear the word decentralized all the time. And to properly make something decentralized, then we actually have to consider the people involved, right? The decisions being made, the creativity implemented. It can't be, we understand that there is some form of centralization that has to occur for order. But at the same time, to make something truly diverse, you need to open it up to more people, to different types of decision makers. So I have one last question for you. What kind of, what does a recognition like being on a book, Women of the Future with 100 women, mean to you at this stage? You have women that are in AI. It's such a diverse group. There's some that are young. They're like in their teens to all over. It's quite a spectrum. What does that mean to you? And what would you say like to another woman, whether she's a child to an adult woman seeing this, what message would you like that to come across as?
Great question. And is that the last question for our session? That time flew by. Great question, right? I remember when I was a younger, I'm pushing 50 now, but a younger, artist. And I remember I created this very controversial piece of art. And it was opening night. And that scene always stuck in my head, right? I'm a very tall woman. I'm 1.7 or 5'7". I was in Asia, I was in Singapore, and I sort of created this piece that was launched in the Esplanade, and it was like Singapore's like marquee theater, all right? So I was there on opening night, and it was a very controversial piece that attracted a lot of media attention. You could still Google it. It's called 251. And on opening night, I won't name names, but the gentleman that ran the organization came up to me and literally pointed to my face and talked down to me like this. He's a lot taller. In my head then, I was only like 24, 25 years old. And these gentlemen was probably like 6-footer talking down to me like this and pointed to me and said, I told you to take these lines out of the script. Now, why didn't you do that? And the fact is, they didn't tell me that until the day off. And I said, I can't make that change because we're going live. Like you had the script for 6 months. You could have asked me to take those lines out at any time, but you just asked me to do it on the day because it's just a show of power to say like, we can do this to you. And here I was as like 20-something-year-old self. I knew that was wrong. And so I was like, hey folks, tonight is opening night. I can't make those changes if you want, but I can't do it at opening night. It'll throw off everything. It'll throw off all the cues. And I just can't do it. Right. And so I stuck to my guns, but I remember the gentleman sort of pointing down and talking down at me. And at that moment, I remember thinking, wow, this is what the patriarchy feels like. Like people can just point fingers at you and talk down at you. And I remember it. I was felt with so much but I was still very respectful and I held my own. I was probably holding back my tears and I said, so and so, with all due respect, this is what happened, and explained very cogently. But I remember fighting back my tears because nobody's ever talked to me like this in public, right? But anyway, the moral of the story and the point I was trying to get to is I am so inspired and so energized by the fact that today you're telling me some teens can be acknowledged for being like women of the future, right? Again, this already tells you it's a mindset shift, right? We recognize that the ethos, the culture, the zeitgeist of the times are changing, right? Younger people are leading into the space and we need to learn from them. They know so much more. So, what I will say is I'm utterly humbled to be, the top 100 women of the future. I want to get to know all the other 99. I want to reach out and learn from them. I think one of the best ways to get better is to hang out with women who are better than you, stronger than you, better than you, and form these great coalitions and learn from each other. I'm also really energized by the spirit. Like everyone is leading in. There's no sense of that competition. Like, oh my God, she's in there. Like, can't talk to her. Let's suss her out, I really love the fact that we really want to break down the walls that we faced when we were growing up. I mean, I knew that for sure when I looked at myself. I remember when I first got this job, my agency won the job for Samsung, and I was directing their campaign in the Middle East. I remembered asking the headhunter, I said, why did you pick our agency? I look like me. You could have gotten some, American dude, some stale pale male to do it. And she was like, no, I saw how you were able to work with all the powers in the room and yet be able to bring all these male egos together and get them to see eye to eye. And I thought that was an aha moment for me because it said a couple of things, that she recognized that feminine or soft power had a part to play in the boardroom, and feminine soft power is not soft. Soft power is not soft. Soft power is integral. It's diplomacy. It's learning how to bring people together. It's learning how to listen. It's learning how to bring coalitions. Whenever you talk about diplomacy, it's always about, bringing people together and creating opportunities for folks to connect, right? Are there differences? Yes, but let's see where are the pukas in Hawaiian or areas for us to pull people and make it more inclusive. I think that is a skill that us women, without sounding essentialist or binary, I think that is what us women do fairly well, right? We do that fairly well because we biologically need to nurture. I mean, I have no children of my own, but I nurture my cats, right? We want to nurture, we want to hurt, we want to care, we want to protect, we want to think about engendering future generations. If you think about sustainability, if you think about why we call this earth Mother Earth, it's precisely all of these qualities, right? We're diplomatic, we foster relations, we are relationship builders. And so I think, I'm excited, I'm humble, honored to be part of Women of the Future, but definitely even more excited to see what the future generations can bring with all our collective energies and mentorship and creativity together.
Wow, that was beautifully said. Thank you for sharing such an amazing story. I pictured myself in that scenario, being there, feeling all the emotions. Thank you so much, Loretta. It's been an honor having you. I cannot wait for this book to come out and see the spread. I hope that we continue this relationship. I look forward to connecting with you again, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
We'll talk soon. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for the honor.